This morning on BRN, core inflation picked up in February. What's it going to mean for your wallet? Joining me now to help break it all down is Dr. David Anderson, an economist and professor at Texas A&M University. Dr. Anderson, always great to see you. Thanks for joining us on the program this morning.
Hey, good morning. It's good to be with you.
It's always great to talk to you. And what I love about talking to you is that you're an economist, you teach economics, but then you also know the food industry, and in particular beef, chicken, that whole farming, I would say, very, very well. So I want to start out by asking you, the PCE report came out, I think, last week. It showed core inflation picked up. I want to get your reaction to that.
Yeah, it continues to stay, I guess people would say persistently high,
Mm-hmm.
higher than anybody wants it to be, and it's sticking around. And so I think that's the big concern is that so far, efforts to kind of bring that down through higher interest rates, kind of the main tool here, uh, boy, it's still sticking around. And so I think that's just a big worry of everybody. And it certainly affects markets everywhere, right? That as we think about an expectation of inflation, is that kind of cooks into everybody's brain that, oh, we expect it to be higher. That becomes, in a way, sort of self-fulfilling in that it leads to higher interest rates because nobody wants to loan money if inflation is going to increase and erode that value. So that leads to that expectation, then leads to higher interest rates. And so, uh, gosh, we continues to stick around with us.
Yeah, and you mentioned interest rates. I mean, the Federal Reserve, I think, kind of, I'll just label it tepid in terms of whether there will be rate cuts, whether there won't be rate cuts. I guess they left it on the table. To your point, they didn't say no, but they also didn't say yes.
Yeah, it's sort of a wait and see and give this some time for higher rates to do their work in a way. And it's not, when we think about, oh, they can raise rates, they have these tools to fight inflation with. Uh, but there's these big time lags in the economy, and so it's not an overnight fix. It's not a quick thing, and so because of that, and these are also imperfect tools as well, and so you make this change, but it takes a bunch of time before it really takes effect, and so it's not an instantaneous thing like, gosh, most of us would like.
Yeah, I mean, like we're so.
Got a lot
And
of quick fixes,
I
right?
know we all have expectations. I think I remember watching a video of a very famous economist, a Nobel laureate, saying, there's pain. There's pain to, and he was talking about the supply of money, which would, of course, lead to inflation. And there's a pain that's inflicted. Let me ask you this, Dr. Anderson. I mean, we're speaking before some of these tariffs go into effect. You talk about short run versus long run. We could see higher prices, doctor. Is that correct? For things like auto parts, which I know you just are getting your car fixed, and other uh, uh, parts of the economy or other goods and services in the economy that are included in this PCE number.
Exactly. And so our economy is much more integrated with the world economy than it was decades ago. And so, you know, as we talk about imposing tariffs, which may happen later this week, uh, you know, we import a lot of stuff. That's because consumers want to buy things that are produced other places. And so we become, think about car parts. Our whole kind of manufacturing system is integrated so much with the rest of the world. And so these tariffs are not going to be pain free. These tariffs are going to ripple through our economy and result in higher prices. Now, there's some things that it's going to depend on what the retaliatory tariffs are,
Yeah.
particularly in my area in terms of meat, and agricultural products. We export a lot of bulk commodities. We export a lot of corn, wheat, soybeans, or soybean meal. We also export rice. We on the beef side, we both import and export, and so what happens on the retaliation side is pretty critically important for how this plays out in terms of prices.
Yeah. Well, we're certainly. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for interrupting. I was going to say, we're told to be patient. I guess we have no choice to be patient at this point. But I can understand from the consumer perspective. I guess they're going to be making all of us as consumers will be choosing where we allocate our money. Do we buy a different type of product? Do we forego a certain product? That's really going to be at the forefront. And especially in your area of expertise, which is food, people could say, I don't want this cut of beef. I want this cut of beef, maybe because it's a little less expensive, or I want it because it's sourced from domestically from the US.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing. You talk about source from the US. We've had an ongoing argument on a lot of the meat side of things, particularly the beef side, on something called country of origin labeling. Actually, for more than 20 years, this has been a kind of an ongoing fight. And the assumption has been that by people, by proponents of this, is that automatically people would want to buy US beef if they knew it was produced here. Um, and in fact, the term is born, raised, and processed here, or born, raised, and slaughtered here. That, if we had a sticker on that label, that, product of the US, that people would naturally gravitate that and want to buy that. And, most people like that idea. But when it comes down to actually buying that product because it's going to be more costly, that's where we balk at it. And
Yep.
so, this has been an ongoing fight in knowing that it's cost more money for that. And so, that's been an ongoing fight. And if we think about it, we've looked at that in terms of cars, orange juice, all these other products over the years. And, people bought cars made in other countries because they like that car. And so, uh, we continue to fight over that because while people like the idea, they aren't willing to pay for it.
Yeah. Well, sellers want to sell their good or service at the highest price possible. Consumers want to consume the product for the lowest price. So, I mean, that's basic economics. Let me shift gears. And this is not just a U.S. issue, Dr. Anderson. You look at Japan, I think they're going to have the highest food prices in 18 months. I mean, this is and Japan is kind of I don't know, not unique, but it's kind of an island nation or set of islands. So it's kind of walled off. I mean, it probably relies a lot on global trade, but this is not an American issue. This is a global issue. It's affecting countries like Japan.
Yeah, this is really appears to be a worldwide issue, whether it's Japan, countries in Africa, all over the world are facing higher food price inflation. And some of it is due to, I would say, let's think about an increasingly volatile weather that, when we're growing food, we're dependent on the weather. And
Yeah.
so as we have more volatile growing conditions, we have more volatile prices. And so uh, particularly, you think about a country like Japan that may import a lot of items. I mean, we export to Japan. We export food items to Japan, and so as those higher prices affect us here, it affects them there. We're more interconnected.
Yeah, we certainly are. And I think you referenced extreme conditions. Uganda as an example. Extreme weather, heat, lack of rain water. I mean, that leads to a lack of produce. But doctor, it doesn't only affect the prices of things. It also could potentially affect your health or people's health, right? Because they wouldn't have access to fresh produce in the case of Uganda because they can't grow because of the extreme conditions right now. That not getting antioxidants, some of the other benefits of some of these foods can have a deleterious effect on people downstream. So it's more than just economics. It impacts every aspect of people's lives.
Well, it really does. Their health and nutrition, particularly in countries where their incomes are not as high as ours. And so they spend a larger proportion of their money, their earnings on food. And so they're much more vulnerable to these volatile prices or to rising prices or to, weather volatility that affects the supplies of the crops that they grow. And so, we have a large portion of the world that is much more vulnerable and has been much more vulnerable to these kinds of price fluctuations than we have here, because we do in the US spend the lowest proportion of our income on food, to my knowledge, of any country in the world.
Yeah, but also we're not buying the best food either. I mean, while we do buy fresh and right, I mean that's a whole nother, it's probably a whole nother show, and we have to bring you back on with like a health expert. Dr. Anderson, we're going to have to leave it there. Great conversation as always. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Hey, thanks, and I enjoyed it.
And don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse, for all the news in one place. Details, of course, at our website, and your subscription helps support all this great BRN content. And guess what? We're back again tomorrow for another edition of BRN. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.